Hello everyone, and welcome back to Land Matrix Technologies, Civil Hub. In the last lesson, we explored the Civil 3D Toolspace and learned how the Prospector, Survey, and Toolbox tabs help organize your project. If you haven't watched the previous lessons yet, I highly recommend watching them first to better understand Civil 3D and follow this course step by step. In this lesson, we look at drawing settings, one of the most important setup steps before you start any Civil 3D drawing. You learn what each option does, why it matters, and how to configure your drawing correctly. Let's get started. Every Civil 3D drawing has its own settings. These settings are stored inside each drawing, so every project can have its own configuration. To access them, right-click the drawing name and select Edit Drawing Settings. Don't click anything else just yet. These settings control how the drawing behaves, including units, coordinate systems, object layers, abbreviations, and many other project-wide options. Before beginning a new project, it's always a good practice to review these settings to make sure your drawing is configured correctly. Now let's open the Drawing Settings dialog and explore each option in detail. Now we are in the Units and Zone tab. This is one of the most important sections in the drawing settings because it defines how your Civil 3D drawing is measured and referenced. The first option is Drawing Units. This determines the measurement unit used throughout your Civil 3D drawing. You can choose between feet and meters. Always make sure the drawing units match your project requirements to avoid incorrect measurements. Next is Drawing Scale. This controls the scale used for annotations and labels. Choosing the correct scale ensures that text, labels, and other annotation objects appear at the proper size. Below that is Angle Units. This setting controls how angles are displayed throughout the drawing. Depending on your project, angles can be shown in decimal degrees, degrees minute seconds, grads, or radians. The Coordinate System defines the geographic reference for your project. It allows your drawing to align correctly with real-world coordinates, GPS data, survey points, aerial imagery, and GIS information. Most surveying and engineering projects require the correct coordinate system before any design work begins. Together, these settings control how your Civil 3D drawing is measured, oriented, and referenced. Setting them correctly at the beginning of a project helps prevent errors later in the design process. In this lesson, we're only learning what each option does. We'll keep the default values unchanged and focus on understanding their purpose. In future lessons, you'll learn when and how to modify these settings for real projects. Next, let's look at the Object Layers tab. This tab controls the default layers that Civil 3D uses when creating different types of objects. Here you'll see a list of Civil 3D objects, and each object can be assigned to its own layer. This helps keep your drawing organized and makes it easier to manage different types of data. For example, survey points can be placed on one layer, surfaces on another, alignments on their own layer, and labels on separate annotation layers. Civil 3D automatically uses these layer settings when new objects are created. For now, just understand what this tab does. We'll come back to these settings later in the course when we start creating points, surfaces, alignments, and other Civil 3D objects. Next, let's look at the Ambient Settings tab. These settings control how different values are displayed throughout your Civil 3D drawing. Unlike the Units and Zone tab, Ambient Settings don't control the drawing itself. Instead, they control how information is displayed and reported across Civil 3D objects. For example, you can control how distances, elevations, coordinates, and angles are displayed. These settings determine items such as precision, units, rounding, and the format used throughout the drawing. For now, it's enough to know where these settings are located and what they control. We'll learn how to customize ambient settings later in the course when we begin creating Civil 3D objects and labels. In this lesson, we learned what drawing settings are and explored the most important options available before beginning a project. Understanding these settings will help you create accurate and consistent civil 3D drawings. Thank you for watching. In the next lesson, we'll begin working with one of the core features of Civil 3D, survey points. You'll learn what points are and why they're the foundation of many Civil 3D workflows. See you in the next lesson.